vision of technical expertise. For example, to introduce innovations in social grants and the rapid mobilization of the much needed resources by the Solidarity Funds. Further, I understand that there has been more agreements and speedy collaborations than ever before at NEDLAC on issues such as health and safety in the workplace, measures to make transport safer, and the promotion of locally produced personal protective equipment. More than at any other time in the recent history, the role and function of NEDLAC is an existential necessity to assist in mobilizing confidence and credibility for the economic reconstruction and recovery plan. Government also welcomes and has embraced the speed of partners in delivering a social compact to turn the economy around. The widening trust deficit between government, labor and business demands full support of the structural interventions and enablers contained in the economic reconstruction and recovery plan. We are committed to the speedy implementation, especially of the necessary structural reforms and long outstanding measures in areas such as energy security and digital migration. And we are further committed to work with social partners where implementation requires a coordinated approach, as well as to continue to discuss the difficult issues that can make our economy recover in a very sustainable and enduring way. As we have said before, the National Development Plan, like the Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, is not the responsibility of government alone. Its effective implementation requires the participation of all stakeholders to decisively deal with the socio-economic challenges of poverty and inequality. Without addressing these socio-economic challenges, then the foundation to nation building and social cohesion will not become sustainable. Equally, it demands of the private sector to assimilate these blueprints into their strategic and operational plans. Surely, it's not enough to reduce community empowerment to a ticking box exercise through corporate social responsibility. Hence, it was reassuring to hear the leader of Business Unity South Africa earlier this year acknowledge that the levels of inequality in our country is now an economic risk, and that purposeful partnerships are necessary to get our economy, our democracy, and our wonderful country back on track. Let us agree that economic inequality undermines human rights for women and young people who remain largely excluded from the economic mainstream. The fault lines of inequality encourage not only absence of shared social cohesion, but contribute to the delegitimization of both the public and the private sector. In measuring ourselves to deliver a better life for all, since 1994, it will be on the basis of extending people's capabilities, which translates to what Amartya Sen called it substantive freedom. The capability approach, as espoused by Sen, amounts to giving citizens and communities opportunities and levers to empower themselves, since, as Sen says, freedoms are not only the primary ends of development, they are also among its primary means. Therefore, we cannot advance nation building and social cohesion without economic inclusion, without removing the barriers of entry for small businesses, and without integrating women and youth in activities that significantly improves the elemental conditions of their lives. In fact, social cohesion is directly shaped by the material levels of equality. In our quest to build a sustainable future that is premised on achieving, among others, spatial equality, as government, we are prioritizing the inclusion of women, the inclusion of young people, and people with disabilities in the unfolding land reform program. Attending to the land question is a justifiable, important action for meaningful nation building and for unlocking untapped agricultural and industrial economic potential for the country's development. In our view, failure to address the land question is unsustainable, and the prevailing conditions provides a fertile ground for social discord and political instability. In finalizing the land reform program, we also look towards NEDLAC as a platform for consultation, for participation, and social compacting to once again play a key role in taking that process to its logical conclusion. We consider this 2020 summit as particularly very special, since it is an occasion to sign the framework agreement for a social compact on supporting ESCOM for inclusive economic growth. Purposeful partnerships through social compacting are very important to support the enhancement of our maturing and the bureaucracy critical for the provision of services in a non-partisan manner. This is in the main premise on an argument of the Indlulamiti scenarios, which says that levels of interpersonal and intergroup trust are about the shared expression of common values and a common vision as encapsulated in our country's Bill of Rights and the National Development Plan. This is why we are excited to be witnessing the signing of this social compact, as it signifies confidence in Eskom and its importance to the South African economy. This is in sync with the work of the political task team that is shared by the Deputy President to bring together players within government towards the resolution of challenges that are faced by Eskom. The resolution of the ongoing Eskom matter and stabilization of the energy supply is critical to inclusive economic growth, employment creation, and poverty reduction. The negotiation of this social compact, which began a year ago, when we were all seized with the energy crisis that was facing our country then, with the prospects of load shedding and high electricity prices. This year has seen significant stabilization of Eskom operations under the current leadership, and with the support of the Eskom political task team, there is a clear path towards energy security. The social compact remains relevant and will be very important, vital, to hold Eskom to account, to rectify the problems of the past, and serve the people of this country with sustainable supply of electricity going forward. It is sincerely encouraging that social partners representing diverse constituencies and institutional mandates managed to find common ground on a pragmatic and sensible program of action with clearly identifiable timelines and milestones to, among others, identify and support innovative, cost-effective funding mechanisms to reduce Eskom's debt, identify measures to assist Eskom and government to access fresh capital where required. We therefore look towards your active participation beyond these noble ideals, because in our view, as the Eskom political task team, the debt and liquidity challenges of this strategic asset call for extraordinary intervention to ensure that Eskom is supported and brought back into operational and financial sustainability. As government, we are fully behind the management of Eskom, and we seek nothing other than its success. Later in the summit, will be addressed by the Director General of the International Labour Organization, Mr. Guy Ryder. This is indeed a privilege for NEDLAC to attract so eminent a person to address us. The ILO has been leading discussions on the future of work and have identified key drivers, namely climate change, technological innovation, demographic shift, and globalization. Indeed, COVID-19 pandemic has to a greater extent fast-tracked some of these drivers. Government thus recognizes the urgency in which we should be responding to and harnessing the positive opportunities posed by the future of work, while mitigating against the adverse impacts that are posed by automation and artificial intelligence, as an example. It also requires of the social partners to deliberate on the necessary changes to our skills strategy, labor legislation, and social security dispensation, so that the ideal of decent work can continue to be realized under these new conditions. For us in the Human Resource Development Council, we recognize that COVID-19 has made more urgent the need to develop skills and training that is innovation-led and technologically advanced. In this regard, we would like to acknowledge the recent collaboration with the ILO on a series of webinars on the future of work, and we trust that the recommendations coming from these dialogues will be taken forward in the new year. The NEDLAC Annual Summit is also an occasion where the annual report of the prior year is released to the public. Due to the lockdown, annual reports are being released later than usual after the conclusion of the financial year. Nevertheless, NEDLAC should be congratulated on the successful release of its annual report. Congratulations. It demonstrates that the vast majority of performance indicators were achieved, and an unqualified audit opinion was obtained. Perhaps after a quarter of a century, it is an appropriate time to reflect on the role of NEDLAC and perhaps to ask the question about its relevance and whether it is still fit for purpose. We understand that this question was posed a year ago at the 24th Annual Summit. Out of concern and frustration that social partners were not able to proactively and together address joblessness and poor economic growth. Government is of the view that the actions of social partners at NEDLAC has answered the question of NEDLAC's relevance. However, the question of whether NEDLAC is fit to achieve the relevant role it has taken on this year in respect of not only economic recovery and responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, but also extending decent working conditions to increasing the number of atypical and informal workers, as well as embracing the future of work, must still be addressed with urgency. The ESCOM Social Compact and the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan deserves our full support. There is no room for apathy and cynicism. There is no tangible benefit in being enemies of hope. Rather, we all benefit together when we are friends to optimism. NEDLAC remains an appropriate platform that is capacitated to pursue issues for which we have got a common interest. We must spare no effort in repositioning NEDLAC to become a relevant platform for social dialogue in our country. If we are to build NEDLAC into a vibrant and agile institution that is fit for purpose, we have to move swiftly to amend its founding legislative instruments so that there's inclusion and participation of the community constituency in all chambers and structures of NEDLAC. Consensus is built through negotiations and not coercion. We reach a win-win outcome if we do not become entrenched to our private interests, but prioritize the common welfare. Compromise and trade-off are central in this instance and not the pursuit of a zero-sum game where eventually no one comes out a winner. In this regard, communication is a key tool to employ, not only the constituencies we represent, but also to get the buy-in of the citizens and broader community of our country. We mention this since part of the ESCOM social compact is about the revival of the campaign to encourage our people to pay for basic municipal services and to stop illegal electricity connections. Our people, our communities must pay for electricity if ESCOM is to succeed. Doing so is in our best interest as a country as we mark this significant milestone in NEDLAC's existence. We wish you all the best in today's deliberations. Let us take the ideas that will emerge from this deliberation forward in ensuring that we deepen equitable participation and representative social dialogue. Thank you very much. Thank you.
This thing is scary. Thank you so much, Deputy President. Before I release you, Deputy President, I think we do have guests who are participating, delegates who have joined us virtually, and I think we have deliberately muted the mics of our participants who have joined us virtually, deliberately so. But we urge our participants, our delegates, to participate through asking questions and providing some comments during the sessions. And where we have invited speakers, you can use or utilize the question and answer function on the Zoom screen that is available for your participation. And for all those who are participating through YouTube, you are also welcome to our summit, and you can also join the YouTube link through the NEDLAC website. I want to take this opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to thank our Deputy President. And we all know that our Deputy President has a very tight schedule. But for us, for gracing this occasion, we are heartily welcome, Deputy President. You are heartily welcomed. And we thank you so much that you have been able to join us. And I must also indicate the fact that we are also joined by the Minister of Public Enterprise, who is going to be facilitating the compact signing at some point. And but our Deputy President, unfortunately, is not going to be long. Actually, at this point in time, because as the program director, I have the opportunity and the power that you don't have, that I can command and direct as to when the Deputy President can leave us. So at this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, I want us to once again give a round of applause to the input that was presented by the President to us. And while we're doing that, let us please stand up and rise. And while we allow the Deputy President to depart, and I will also command the Minister to take the Deputy President out in the meantime before we proceed with our session. The pity we are not in a conference, we can't see the GP. Yeah. Thank you so much. A round of applause also, ladies and gentlemen. You may be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I must say, ladies and gentlemen, that this partnership was put to the ultimate test. Our partnership in this NEDLAC was put to the test in the past 9 months or so. So our social partners convened under NEDLAC banner had come up with robust plans and interventions to ensure that the country's response to the effects of COVID-19 pandemic in a coordinated and efficient manner. So we need to acknowledge that. We will be at this point in time receiving a report from the Executive Director of NEDLAC, Lisa Setfeld. But I also have seen that you are sitting very far. At some point the Minister wanted me to call you to come sit closer. I've seen you all. I've seen Mr. Kingston, I've seen Dr. Cheputa, I've seen you, Dr. Jali. So our participants are actually here. So we will be giving this opportunity to our Executive Director to take us through on the program progress so far for the past year. How far have we fared as NEDLAC? And the opportunity is yours, Lisa. Can we give her a round of applause, please? And I have not said it, ladies and gentlemen, she looks beautiful today. Have you seen that? You know, only women can realize these things. Some men can't see them, but you are beautiful. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Do you want to clean this so I can come?
No.
So let me say all protocol observed, but I also want to express my appreciation in absentia now to the Deputy President for opening this annual summit and to welcome everybody that's here in the room. It's obviously very strange under COVID conditions to be so far apart, and it's even stranger to know that there is probably up to now 200 people listening to us and watching us from all around the country. But let me also acknowledge all of you that are sitting in your offices or your homes and participating with us in this annual summit. So I'm not sure if you want to, you can see there, but anyway. So I think the Deputy President already talked about the fact that usually we hold the summit in September, but that this year we're having it later, and this really gives us an opportunity to be able to talk about not only 2019-20, but actually this year. So we've talked a lot already about context, so I'm not going to be long, but we can all acknowledge it's an unprecedented year. And if you looked at the Oxford English Dictionary, they couldn't find a single word for this year, while the Collins Dictionary decided lockdown. I also asked some of our colleagues and staff to count how many online meetings NEDLAC had since March. 252 was the number, which is quite some feat. I'm not, again, I think we've all seen the pandemic and we're all now worried about a second wave. But I think something that has been a feature of this year and definitely be a feature of next year is that we're in for a marathon. I'm not going to go through these figures, but to remind all of us about the dire state of the economy as well as the high percentage of debt that our country faces. I have quoted from the National Treasury statement in October. If we then look also at unemployment figures, this isn't a good picture at all. If you look at the graph, that line, which is a complete outlier, is the number of people who are unemployed in South Africa. And we need to be mindful of the fact that women in South Africa earn 30% less than their male counterparts. And then we've talked a lot about Eskom with its significant debt, the ongoing threat of load shedding as a result of an aging fleet of power stations. And the Deputy President also referred to the future of work, and I'm sure we'll hear more about the future of work from the ILO DG shortly. But key part of the future of work is the future of our world and the impact of climate change, which we also need to be mindful of. So with that, I want to look quickly at the overview of the 1920 financial year. This is detailed in the annual report, and if you haven't got your copy electronically, you will also be receiving a hard copy, and there are some hard copies that are on the tables for those that are here. So we have achieved a 92% achievement and an unqualified audit, although we do have some findings in respect of irregular and wasteful expenditure. And as the Minister said, we carried out our work in collaboration with social partners to ensure the outcomes are not short-term, but medium to long-term, and are mostly importantly sustainable. Some of the highlights of 1920 was the establishment of the Presidential Working Committee to ensure that the commitments of the Job Summit were implemented, the progressing of a number of Job Summit agreements, ongoing processing of legislation on policy, the establishment of the Eskom Leadership Group and the Compact that we've talked about, increasing the nature and tempo of engagement on the budget process, as well as concluding a number of internal policies and stabilizing the leadership of NEDLAC. This slide refers to the key contents of the social compact, which we'll be signing later, and I think the Deputy President has already referred to this, so I will not be going into it in detail. So that brings us then to the overview of 2020. And what I've looked at here, or what we've looked at here, are the 4 focus areas of this year: responding to the pandemic, shifting from the Presidential Job Summit to economic recovery, the ongoing work into policy and legislation, and building NEDLAC fit for purpose. And I think Virgil Seafield in our report summarizes what we've been able to achieve, different forms of engagement, solidified new forms of work, and importantly, put NEDLAC at the forefront of critical debates. So in terms of the COVID pandemic, we started collectively on the 15th of March, setting up a NEDLAC rapid response team, which has worked very actively and intensely. We had 2 special executives chaired by the President, and yes, it has been an important area of collaboration, but it hasn't been without its hiccups, and there has been many calls for more effective measures and engagement, particularly with the NAT joints and the NCCC, and I can indicate that we did have a very productive meeting on Friday, and I think that this last barrier to effective collaboration around the pandemic, with due regard to the fact that it's going to be with us for a while, is being cemented. And then there's also a quote from Kaiser, who talked about how we were able very speedily to transition to virtual platforms. So some of the achievements and progress, already I think both our political leadership referred to the COVID tours. I cannot underestimate the amount of hours of this subcommittee of COVID tours has spent, from the legal environment to the operational challenges to worrying about foreign workers, to ensuring that over 54 billion rand has been able to be into the economy to workers. In addition to that, particularly in the early times,